This is Laura Ingram. Join me every weekday morning on The Patriot. Stay tuned. Live with Lou is next. Don't touch that dial on 1410 The Patriot.
All right. I got the go-ahead. It's my turn. So, how's it going out there today? Yuba, Sutter, Butte, Plumas, Colusa, Nevada. Let's see, who else? Maybe a tad of Sacramento. Several counties out there that hear us, or you can get a little bit of us. And if you're on board with us and never heard us before, this is KMYC 1410 AM, The Patriot. And we're on live here today, talking for 3 hours up to noon. For those of you that are under the influence and out of the mainstream, not working, this is Saturday, and this is the morning. So whatever you want to plan to do today, maybe it's the first thing you do in the morning is use the toilet, get a cup of coffee, and smoke a blunt, just to kick the day off in a positive fashion. So we're here live, as I mentioned. Sometimes we pre-record because Wikiman Santos and I can't be here both at the same time. But today we are. We're just here separated by glass. And so if you'd like to call in today, you actually can do that at 530-742-5555. Once again, 742-5555. This is a pro-choice operation, so sometimes your calls aren't convenient. I have to abort them. It's not compatible with my career. So, or maybe it's the wrong gender. We do utilize gender selection on some of these calls. If you cannot hear very clearly because of the signal, you can go on a computer to kmycradio.com and click on the Listen Live button. Or if you get rudely interrupted and you want to listen later, or somebody says, oh, you should go back and you should listen to that guy, he did something, you can go to One Eye Blind Media on YouTube. That's a channel, One Eye Blind Media, and then look for Live with Lou and click on the program you want to listen to. A friend of mine texted me last night, said she and her husband and sons were listening to a past show while they ate dinner. I thought, I don't know whether that's a good dinner combo or not, particularly when you have young kids at the table trying to teach them manners and things. So we're out here in eastern Yuba County on top of Mount Huth. And we're part of the Obama resistance. You think, oh, well, you forgot, Lou, Obama's been long gone. He actually is not long gone, and he may be the only president that is actually hoping for a coup and leading a resistance to overthrow the government. And he's just a complete hypocrite. And he's against the wall, but he builds a wall around his house. And you could just go on and on and on. In fact, let me just do this right now. I saw this come through, sent to me. It's called The Imposter. It's a story of a man who is half white but pretends to be black, who is a Muslim but pretends to be a Christian, who funded ISIS but pretends to have fought them, who incites blacks against whites but pretends to be a social justice warrior, who was born in Kenya, grew up in Indonesia, but pretends to be an American, who gave our enemies uranium and billions of dollars but pretends to care about America. That would be Barack, okay? And so I heard Nate Black, he's the auditor controller of Sutter County, I listened to the last few minutes of his show, and he was talking about John Brennan. I'm also going to talk about Mr. Brennan and he calls the president a man that has committed treason. I would actually think that would be John Brennan's hat if he wants to wear it. But I wanted to start off with something encouraging today. I ran across this, and so I like to do a little bit of history every once in a while because they don't really cover patriotic history in school. They don't cover the Constitution. They cover things like transsexual behavior and how to put on a condom, things like that. So I wanted to tell you for a few minutes about the first African American, or some of my friends say, quit saying African American. Some of my black friends, they say, I'm not an African American. I am an American. Like, forget the African part. Never been to Africa, haven't visited. So the first American that was black to receive the Medal of Honor was a fellow that fought in the Civil War. And he was Sergeant William Harvey Kearny. Despite being shot in the face, shoulders, arms, and legs, refused to let the American flag touch the ground. Now, I don't know what percentage of the NFL happens to be black. I think a lot of them do, frankly, but there may even be some white guys over there taking a knee. But I want to tell you about Mr. Kearny because I think it's important to know our history to keep our focus right. Of 3,498 service members who have received the Medal of Honor, let me just say that again, 3,498. So when you think you're going to protest America, hold that thought in mind. They got the Medal of Honor throughout history. Only 88 have been dark-skinned, colored, black. The first black recipient, as I mentioned, was Mr. Kearny, an Army sergeant who earned the honor for protecting one of the United States' greatest symbols during the Civil War. For you millennials, civil doesn't mean they all got along, being civil. During the Civil War, and that great symbol was the American flag, or is the American flag. Kearny was born into slavery in Norfolk, Virginia in 1840. His family was eventually granted freedom and moved to Massachusetts, where Kearny was eager to learn and secretly got involved in academics. We say secretly because there were laws and restrictions that banned blacks from learning to read and write. Isn't that tragic? They didn't want them to compete with whites. Same way unions formed to keep blacks that were willing to work for less out of the labor pool. And they don't want competition. Unions don't. I'm just throwing that in. That's extra. But back to Kearny. Kearny wanted to pursue a career in the church. He was a Christian guy, and he thought, I'm going to serve God. I'm going to find a spot in the church somewhere and just really help people. But then the Civil War broke out, and he decided the best way he could serve God was by serving in the military to help free the oppressed. So if you think, oh, where's that in the Bible? Try Isaiah 61. That's one spot. In March 1863, Kearny joined the Union Army and was attached to Company C, 54th Massachusetts Colored Infantry Regiment, the first official black unit recruited for the Union in the North. 40 other black men served with him, including two of abolitionist Frederick Douglass's sons. You didn't realize that there were blacks fighting in the Civil War? Actually, we're probably doing more educating here this morning than Marysville Yuba City High School are about blacks and slavery in the Civil War. So we'll continue. Within a few months, Kearny's training would be put to the ultimate test during the unit's first major combat mission in Charleston, South Carolina. On July 18, 1863, the soldiers of Kearny's regiment led the charge on Fort Wagner. During the battle, the unit's color guard was shot. Now, for you out, the millennials and those in Olivers and Linda, that doesn't mean homosexuals or people of color. That would be the folks packing the flag or flags. So the unit's color guard was shot. That was the guy carrying the flag. Carney, who was just a few feet away, saw the dying man stumble, and he scrambled to catch the falling flag. Despite suffering several serious gunshot wounds himself, Carney kept the symbol of the Union held high. For those that never got taught any history in high school, the Union was basically the U.S. government versus a confederacy that wanted to secede from the Union. Okay, this is the American flag we're talking about. Carney kept the symbol, or the flag, held high as he crawled up the hill to the walls of Fort Wagner, urging his fellow troops to follow him. He planted the flag in the sand at the base of the fort and held it upright until his near lifeless body was rescued. Even then, though, he didn't give up. Many witnesses said Carney refused to give the flag to his rescuers, holding it tighter until, with assistance, he made it to the Union's temporary barracks. Carney lost a lot of blood and nearly lost his life, but not once did he allow the flag to touch the ground. His heroics inspired others that day and were crucial to the North securing victory at Fort Wagner. Carney was promoted to the rank of sergeant for his actions. For his bravery, Carney was awarded the Medal of Honor on May 23rd, 1900. Kind of late, don't you think? But they got it handled anyway. Carney's legacy serves as a shining example of the patriotism that Americans felt at the time, despite the color of his skin. Isn't it interesting how there's so many Americans that were black, right in the midst of the terrible sin of slavery, were able to just work through that and see the positives of America and seek those out. It's kind of like my friend of mine says, you know, sometimes you just have to, on eating chicken, you just have to eat the chicken and toss away the bones. So Carney's legacy serves as a shining example. So I was sent a link. Aretha Franklin died this week. So I was sent a link of her singing the national anthem, and I went on the internet and saw her singing it in a number of events. But the event I watched all the way through was at a Detroit Lions football game. I think it was on Thanksgiving, 2016, and they put her on a stage out in the middle of the field. It wasn't just stand up and sing into a mic, but they had her on a piano, Aretha Franklin, and they had a gentleman next to her on an organ, and she sang what I'd call a gospel rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. And it went a lot longer than the traditional Star-Spangled Banner. And it was interesting, most interesting, you not only saw her, but they showed a lot of the football players. Nobody kneeled that day. That was prior to the kneeling. And everybody was pretty moved by the singing of the national anthem. And I was fascinated because she was probably dealing with her cancer at that time, pancreatic cancer, or it was having an effect on her. But I thought, now it's interesting. She doesn't have to do that. She's from Detroit. She didn't have to do that. She's worth millions of dollars. But obviously they invited her to come and do that on Thanksgiving. And at her age, she was in her 70s. She could have just said, no, thank you. There's a lot of other singers out there in the world that can do that. But she chose to do that, and that's, it's just not like singing any song. It's a very significant song to this country. I saw where a guy that I've never had any respect for, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, or when I was a youngster and he began playing for UCLA basketball, his name was Lou Alcindor. And then he changed his name because he converted to the Muslim faith. But his comment was this week that not related to Aretha Franklin, but I thought the timing was significant. His comment about the Star-Spangled Banner was that it was like a slave song. I thought, these people are just making me tired out here. So, America's a big place, isn't it? There's 300-something million people here. And there's some really wild stuff going on in our country. So, I just want to give a shout out to all the people that appreciate this country, no matter what flavor they are, what color they are. If you're a black and you appreciate this country and want to give any honor to the country for the opportunity you've had, you're considered not really black. Black is no longer a color, it's an agenda, and it's a socialist philosophy now, and a reparations philosophy. But if you're black and you appreciate the freedom you have in this country, et cetera, et cetera. It's like appreciating your family. No family's perfect, but you think, I love my family. Or your home. Love to go on vacation, love to come home. It's not perfect, it's home. So thank God for guys like William Carney. Meet Sergeant William Carney, who right in the midst of all the torture and inhumane treatment of people of his same skin color, he thought it a worthy investment to, instead of just serving the church, to help set people free by fighting in the Civil War. So, way to go, Mr. Carney. I'm sure some of your residents are out there, and I hope they're not a part of the Black Lives Matter movement. What a shame that would be, right? Well, I want to mention to you, we got a few minutes? Okay, we'll do this, and then I've been talking about how the Sutter Butte Tea Party Patriots have kind of evolved into the Yuba Sutter Constitutional Republicans, and they have a headquarters at 441 Bridge Street, Suite E, and it's a significant location because it's right next to the Cookie Tree. And the Cookie Tree is one of the most generous places. They've been helping Trauma Intervention Program that I work with for years. We give cookies out to emergency responders, showing appreciation, but it's right there in that little headquarters or that strip mall there, and they meet over there the fourth Thursday of each month, and they got all kinds of activities going over there, and they have a special meeting coming up with Jeanette Finicum, kind of an unusual name, Finicum, Finicum, and the reason her name may stick out to you, very unusual, is her husband was murdered by law enforcement up in Oregon as a part of the protest against Obama's government running farmers and ranchers off their land. I always wondered, how come Obama keeps buying all those bullets for these different agencies like the Forestry Service and the EPA and the Department of Interior? What are they doing with all them millions of bullets? Well, I firmly believe that they were going to eventually take all that land back, and if people will resist it, they're going to shoot them, just like what happened over there in Las Vegas with the Bundys. They were going to have a standoff and draw down on them with snipers and have a shootout. But they got. I think God put a kaboom on them. So Thursday, August 23rd, Jeanette Finicum, the wife of Lavoie, is going to be at the headquarters and going to be speaking over there, and they're going to, I guess maybe they're going to even do a movie screening. I guess they're making a movie called Lavoie, Dead Man Talking. And there are some law enforcement people that are being held accountable for Lavoie's shooting. Did you know that? There's no publicity on it, but there's some court actions right now going on dealing with these guys that shot Lavoie Finicum, who was unarmed, and it's all on film. You can watch it right on YouTube. It was all recorded. It's amazing. They record your arrest and your assassination nowadays. So the headquarters over there is going to be open on Monday through Saturday, 5 p.m. to 5. It's all at night, 5 to 8. Let me say it that way. Headquarters open at night, 5 to 8, because they want to gear up and win some elections. They're going to start bringing candidates in and having candidate nights. And also, after the Blues and Brews event coming up in the community, they're going to have a get-together after that as well, starting about 7 o'clock on that night. If you want to stop in over there. You can, if you want to find out more about them, you can call Tammy Reichard. She's the chapter treasurer, 701-2845, 701-2845. This is different than the local Republican committee. These people are actually going to work at getting something done. So we're going to take a break, be right back for another 2.5 hours.
Did you know that Article 4, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution lays out the framework for the state of Jefferson's plan to split California? A state can be formed from the land within another state if the state legislature and Congress approve it with a simple majority vote. 51% is all it takes. Your vote doesn't count in Northern California. California is broken and the time has come for 51. Please visit soj51.net and donate now to show your support.
All right. We're back. Wiki, you got some Dunkin' Donuts coffee over there. You like that coffee? It's good. Good coffee. You know, the first time I drank Dunkin' Donuts coffee, I went to the Philippines, and I was in Manila, and I'd never seen Dunkin' Donuts, but they had it there. And I was looking for some good American, not Filipino food. I like Filipino food, but I needed to start off the day with a donut and a cup of coffee. So I ran to this just down the street from where I was staying, downtown Manila. Mm-hmm. I went to Dunkin' Donuts. I said, "This is good stuff over here." It is
good stuff.
Yeah. All right. I like the building they fixed up in Yuba City. It looks good.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. All right. So as I was pondering the Yuba Sutter constitutional people, conservative people, I don't even like to use that word Republican. It's just like bad baggage. But I think I need to make sure there's got so many things going on over there. I want to make sure I got this dialed in right. So the 23rd, this coming Thursday, they are going to be discussing the grand jury. And if you're unfamiliar with this, all you counties that are listening in around Northern California, we got a judge over here, the grand potentate, Brian Aronson, that he's doing his other legal beagles over here a favor, Amanda Hopper, and she's the district attorney, and Gene Jordan, the county counsel, who many people think were taken to task by the grand jury, and he did them a solid, as they say on the streets. And he just said, this grand jury report, it ain't going to be able to come out because this thing didn't meet the witness of the Holy Spirit. So we're going to have to just put a kibosh on this. He said, I don't really like some of the stuff in here, so unless I like it. Now, all you grand juries, you should take notice up and down the state, because some dog who can call himself a judge can just say, I don't really think I go along with all of this, so nobody gets to see it. And so we're having a tussle over here in Sutter County, and the Yuba Sutter Constitutional Republicans are going to be discussing it this Thursday night at 6:30. They're meeting every fourth Thursday of the month, and then they threw in a Saturday, I think it's a Saturday, 25th at 7 p.m., or maybe it's a Sunday, 25th at 7 p.m. After there's a fundraiser called Blues and Brews. After a fundraiser, about 7 p.m., they're going to have a meeting as well, as a party after the party, they call it. But then in September, and I want to make sure I didn't get you confused on this. I got myself confused. Sometimes I can't even keep my own thoughts straight. You see those guys walking down the streets in Yuba Sutter area talking to themselves? That would be me some days. I'd like saying, what in the world? So Jeanette Finicum, wife and widow of murdered Lavoy Finicum, she's going to be in town in September at their meeting on the fourth Thursday, and that's when they're going to preview this movie, some sort of screening. I don't know if they'll show the whole thing or parts of it, called Lavoy, Dead Man Talking. You got it? So hopefully I got those. Now, the reason I bring these guys up is because I believe in what they're doing, but also they send me some money to stay on the air. So I just want to be totally clear on that. If somebody wanted to give me a lot of money to be on the air and I didn't like them, I wouldn't take their money or be on the air. Just not interested in that. Some people say, Lou, why don't you do this or be on more than one station? Don't really care about that, right? I don't think God has me up here to do this for that or to make money. I don't need any money, actually. But we need to pay some bills. I personally don't need any money. I'm okay. I got enough to cover my rent, take care of my house, the utilities. My biggest expense is Cal Water in Marysville. And I eat a couple times a day. That's about all I need and keep my car running. But we pay some bills out here, so the folks, the Yuba Sutter Constitutional Republicans, help me out here. So thank you very much. Tomorrow, they have the Yuba Sutter Political Spotlight from 1 to 3, where they talk about all kinds of things going on in the Yuba Sutter area. So you might want to, if you're Yuba Sutter type folks, you might be interested in that. I don't know whether they talk too much about national stuff, but so there's that, 1 to 3. You can catch up on that as well. And so I'll wait till next break we'll cover some of our other sponsors, and also want to talk about a fundraiser that Trauma Intervention's doing. It's been about a year since we did our last one, and we're going to be selling some weapons, and we're going to be doing an online fundraising deal. I want to mention we've been negotiating with another client to support us, and they said, Lou, we really don't need any advertising because we don't need to, we're just selling all we can get, all we can do. So I said, well, I'll put you on the air, no cost. I like what you're doing. So this is a product that they can't keep on the shelves. In fact, I can't even find it anywhere around town. It's Dr. DJ Trump's Butt Hurt Salve. Special formula number 45. And you can get in a 4-ounce can. The huge can, quality guaranteed. And the Butt Hurt Salve soothes the sting of massive butt hurt resulting from unexpected defeat and exposure to the raw truth. So it says to put it on liberally for 8 years. Repeat as needed. So we're trying to get the butt hurt salve people to come on board with us and chip a little money in, but so far they said, Lou, we don't need any advertising. We can't keep it on the shelf. I don't know whether Amazon.com even carries it. I can't find it anywhere. I go by Walgreens and CVS, and I asked them to say, you got any of that butt hurt salve over there at DJ Trump's? They just kind of look at me. And but anyway, we want to give them a shout out. We think they're doing a good job. And if you need a little salve, put the word out. You may be able to find some out there somewhere. Now, the other thing that just shocked me was an article I stumbled across last night. And, people, I deal with people that are having troubles all the time. And some people struggle with depression. And the title of this article from University Research was Semen May Actually Cure Depression in Women. I thought, well, that's interesting. So it says we already know the many health benefits that come along with sex, but could there be more to it than we really have thought in the past? Recently, psychologists have found that a woman's happiness levels and sleep quality could be attributed to the quality of the semen going into her body during sex. So that, last week in the Yuba County Jail, I was in there with a Yuba County health nurse, and we were talking about sexually transmitted infections. So, of course, that included condom usage, right? But using a condom is not beneficial to the female when it comes down to her mental state. It actually is not fulfilling the challenge of helping her sleep and making her happy. So the University of New York interviewed 300 ladies about their sexual behavior, and the women were asked to fill out an anonymous questionnaire that addressed various aspects of their behavior. And here's the findings, that females who had intercourse without use of condoms had significantly lower depression level when compared to those who usually or always used equipment, condoms and stuff. So anyway, they just said there's more to semen than just, there's something going on in those products that pass through their cortisol, estrogen, oxytocin, melatonin, serotonin, prostaglandins, all kinds of stuff flowing through there that helps people feel good. Sometimes I say I need some of those oxytocins and stuff. I'm feeling a little rough today. I felt a little rough yesterday. I thought I need some of this. I need some of that melatonin. Help me sleep at night. So one of the big things we teach kids today is always use protection. Well, females maybe aren't going to benefit by that. Maybe they're not going to get pregnant on you, but they're not going to be happy either. So it's like that bumper sticker, Mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy around here. Just thought I'd throw that in there just for your, keep your mental health state strong. All this talk, you heard that clip just about socialism. I am so fascinating that millennials and all these college kids think socialism is so hot, but they never want to go live at one of these socialist countries. They always want to live in a capitalist country. So I saw this come across. I thought it was interesting. It said there's no unemployment in socialism, no unemployment. Like my friend Thuy Nguyen, who lives up in Hanoi, she used to say to me after the takeover of communists in Vietnam, people were told to go work somewhere, so they pretended to work, and the government pretended to pay them. So number one, there's no unemployment in socialist countries, but no one really works. Number two, no one works, but everyone gets some pay. I say some pay. I remember when I was in Moscow right after the fall of communism, and doctors were getting about $25 a month. Unbelievable. Medical doctors, teachers, $15, $18, $19 a month. So they were working, but they weren't getting paid. There just wasn't enough to go around. Number three, everyone gets paid, but there's nothing to buy with the money. In other words, you go to the store like in Venezuela, and there's nothing on those shelves. The shelves are still there, because back when capitalism was happening in Venezuela, things were packed on those shelves. Venezuela is one of the biggest oil producers in the world. And in Moscow, we had to wait in line outside the store, and they never even let you go. You can't go in and browse. They sent somebody out and said, give me your list, and we'll go in and pick it up. And you pay in advance. So here's the list. Okay, we want this much money. You front them the money. I tell the kids in juvenile hall, I said, how many of you guys front money on a drug deal? Everybody says, not really. That'd be bad. Then I ask them why they front the money at In-N-Out Burger and stuff. Yeah. You pay in advance. You trust those people. So number four, no one can buy anything, but everyone owns everything. Yeah, you're all an owner of the state. Number five, everyone owns everything, but no one is really satisfied. I never found a socialist person that didn't want to make a few bucks. In Vietnam, they're always got these gigs on the side, making money. Number six, no one is satisfied, but everyone is afraid of the state. It's interesting. We're always trying to dodge the cops. I know more and more people are trying to dodge government around here, trying to get their jobs done without having to pay thousands of dollars in fees every time you turn around, whether it's to the state, the county, the city. You just think, I'm tired of paying them for the privilege of living, and it's just like our friends over there in Hagerman. Oh, by the way, I just heard another couple's moving to Idaho. You know Ted Holmes, his son. All right, so we're talking about the IRS right before we had to take a little pause. And the IRS became, under the Obama administration. You know, I did taxes for years. I used to do a lot of bookkeeping back in my youngster days. And I had a little, I was intimidated by the IRS because they had so much power, but I always felt they were probably fair. They were honest people, and they were just there to, I may disagree with them, right? But they were there to carry out the laws of the land, right? So you just respected them like law enforcement. And so to see the IRS being used to undermine anyone that might have a different view of the direction of America, or may not like the philosophy and the politics of the president, to undermine organizations that were following all the rules and filing for a 501c3 or C4 exemption, which was totally allowed by law, where you could educate people. 501c4 are primarily education, where you can educate people about a cause or a movement. So to see the government stonewall, blackball, undermine, harass, send bills, and once you answer 20, 30, 40, in fact, I had a guy just call me last week if I would help him start a 501c3. He wanted to work with the homeless, and how to, because people know I've started nonprofits and filled out all the paperwork for the Franchise Tax Board and the IRS, and it's not hard. It's a little tedious. There's a lot of questions. But once the packets were filled out for these 501c4 and 501c3 organizations, then they had follow-up 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 questions. And once you answered those, then they had more questions and more questions and more questions. And what they wanted to do is stonewall these organizations that were shocked. You remember right when Obama took over, he began to bail out all these homeowners that had gone bankrupt because they bought all these houses, no money down, etc., right? And people were steamed at that why do some people get money from government and others don't? It's called crony capitalism. So there was an organization, the Tea Party rose up, and all these organizations started rising up, and Obama needed to run a second time, and so they needed to put the kibosh on them, and they did it through the government, using government agencies, just like they were using government agencies, the EPA, and they actually did it before Obama under the Clinton and Bush administrations, to rewild millions and millions of acres that farmers and ranchers had developed, some over 100 years, and developed productive ranches, and now they decided, we don't want you there, so we're taking that property back. So they did it with attorneys, and they basically bankrupted these ranches. So now the IRS was being used. All these entities were being used as enforcement instead of like management tools of managing what the people wanted. Like, I want to be a nonprofit. I want to be a church. I want to help. I want to have a fly fishing club, and we need to have a nonprofit, whatever. I want to help veterans. They began to target these conservative groups, and our local group here was targeted and basically run out of business. So John Koskinen, right in the middle of it, the first, remember that was when Obama said when he was asked by the media, hey, what's going on with the IRS? Says, oh, I just read it when you wrote about it. I never heard about it. Never. This is the first time I've heard about it. So the original, under the start of this controversy, the IRS director left, and then John Koskinen was put in there to reform the agency. Remember, he was the guy who said, it's really unfortunate, we're sad to say that Lois Lerner's, I have documents in my file for the Trauma Intervention Program with Lois's signature on them. It's probably a collector's item. Lois Lerner was the head of the nonprofit part of the IRS, and he said, I'm sorry, I don't know how it happened, but all her emails have disappeared. And hard drives, it's just, the only thing he left out was the Russians did it. So he lied to Congress. They eventually found the emails. And Lois Lerner took the Fifth Amendment, but she eventually retired, and they all got wonderful salaries. So anyway, I talked to, kind of reminisced about that this week, and I wanted to write an article. I think it's this past week in the territorialdispatch.biz. You can, if you're interested in reading about that, you can read it over there. But who would have thought that our government, I guess I thought better about our government than what I've learned over the last few years under the Obama administration on how the government would be used to hammer away at citizens. So pretty disappointing. Well, in Yuba County and probably in Sutter as well, well, not Sutter right now, but maybe in some of your other counties, Nevada, I haven't checked, Nevada, Butte, Placer, Colusa. Yuba County is now following the example of Marysville in running out of money. Oh, okay. Okay, we got Craig Christensen called up. Let's get him on the phone. Craig, are you there? Hello?
Hello?
Okay, Craig, this is Lou.
Hey, Lou, how you doing?
Thanks for calling. Hello?
I was director.
Are you got your phone? You got your radio off, Craig?
I do.
Okay, we're getting some feedback here.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Let's try it again.
Okay. Well, I was the director of our Tea Party at the time when we were trying to do our 501c3.
Okay,
and,
Craig.
It was quite an ordeal, but we tried to do everything.
Are you still there?
And so we filled out the paperwork, sent it in. After about a year, we hadn't heard a word, so we, mailed in some inquiries as far as what was going on with it. And of course, they kick it back, and we forgot to either dot an I or cross a T. It was some stupid thing like that, just a...
Right.
So we fixed that all up, and we sent it in, and then we get back an envelope from them of all that was requested, and they gave us 7 days to provide information that was crazy. I mean, they wanted all the information of everyone who donated to our group, our members. They wanted personal information on us board members, and what they were requiring for us to get together wasn't even possible to do in those 7 days. So we sat down as a board, and by that time we were already hearing the stories where they were going after, directors of other Tea Parties who actually did have money. So we just felt that we were probably going to restructure and go as a club or something of that nature and just pay taxes on our donations. So we did. We dropped the whole thing, or at least we thought we did. And then after my directorship had expired and Bob Bagley was the new director, about that time they come along, and apparently we didn't fill out all the proper paperwork to drop it, so there was about $5,000-6,000 worth of back fees and taxes that they hit our club with that we had to pay.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it was a real eye-opener. The individuals that were on our board, we weren't wealthy people, and we just couldn't afford to have the whole weight of the IRS and the U.S. government come down on us. And So that's what they did to us, and I'm sure that's what they did to most of the small groups.
Yeah.
It's pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah, I don't know about the other Tea Parties, but I know, as I think you probably followed Catherine, I think it's Ingebretson down in True the Vote. She started the organization to just combat voter fraud in Texas, and they were audited. They were personally audited. They were investigated by, they had Ingebret Manufacturing in Texas, and their business was investigated by the OSHA a couple times, FBI, ATF. I mean, it was unbelievable. She's the one who actually testified before Congress about the abuse of the IRS. And so she was kind of the face of the opposition.
See, I'm a licensed firearms manufacturer, so, I mean, that's ATF, right? That's
right.
federal.
Yeah.
So they probably could have really, if they wanted to, they could have really came in and created some serious issues for them.
Yeah.
So, but we were not going to provide information on our donors.
Right. It's illegal, isn't it? I think it's illegal.
That just wasn't going to happen. We weren't going to give up. That's just. I mean, that's exactly what you need, right? To provide people who donate to your cause. Then you give up this information, and you have the IRS going after them. I mean, that
exactly.
Would really.
Well, I thought that Ruth Criddle had told me that as secretary, she said some of the members actually ended up getting audited at the same time, which she thought was more than coincidence.
Yeah, well, that could be. I wasn't with the group when
at
Ruth
that time. Yeah.
But none of the board members that who was on the board when we initially filed the paperwork had any experience like that, but I'm surprised we didn't.
Yeah.
But, what happened is nationwide it became such a big issue that I think they might have been kicking back a little bit on it. I don't know, but I know they did go after some of the bigger groups, Jenny Rapini of NorCal Tea Party.
Right.
Okay, and she's a fighter, man. I tell you what, she's part of the lawsuit, and if you ever wanted to know the full extent of all the information, she'd be the one to talk to find out. Yeah,
her name has come up before. I haven't talked to her, but I think she's also a key person in the state of Jefferson movement.
She is, her and her husband, Dell.
Yeah.
They've really been big behind pushing that, and they're great people. Seriously, they
are.
Well, anyway, I just thought I'd call
to me, you read these things in national media and you think, oh, that's too bad. But when you realize that people that you work with and, you live in the same town as got jerked around for really just trying to exercise their First Amendment rights, right? To just get together, meet together, discuss issues, right?
Yeah, it's a real shocker when you're just trying to do the right thing, or at least you think you are. You're a group no different than any other group, and all of a sudden you're potentially looking at the boot on your neck of the federal government.
It's very intense.
Regardless of your views, and even if you want to fight, you better have $500,000 to do that fight.
Right.
Because they'll destroy you, and they know they can do that.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Is they have an open checkbook, and you're so you end up kind of like where Paul Manafort is right now.
Right.
Either give in or we're going to ruin you, and that's just what they do.
Yeah, it's all it's really brought home. I've been reading this magazine that one of the listeners referred me to called Range, and there are some amazing articles in there. And the fight that has been brought by the federal government to destroy farmers and ranchers. That some, like the Hage family, has been fighting for like 3 or 4 decades, so long that one of their members went to law school. He was a cowboy, went to law school to become an attorney because they just ran out of money to pay attorneys.
Sure.
So he could defend himself.
Yeah.
And they're still fighting to preserve their lands that are being taken from them. And that's what happens is they use the taxpayers' money to destroy them.
Your own money.
Your own money. It's unbelievable. So, well, Craig, thanks so much, for the work you put into it, and all the efforts you've made to stand up for the right cause. There
was 20, 30 million people that joined that deal, and
I know.
Just one's trying to carry it, get it moving, and
right.
But it took a lot of people, and to be honest with you, if it wouldn't have been for the Tea Party, I can't imagine where we would probably be today.
I know.
Even though you don't hear Tea Party much anymore, it's not necessarily that anymore as it is. It's kind of the underground movement and the awareness that brought to all of the, you go along your whole life, you work and you vote, and you look what's going on with the Department of Justice today, and you just never thought that was going to happen.
Never. I'm still.
And I'll tell you what, if it wouldn't have been for Trump, I think that was kind of a divine intervention.
Yeah.
Trump was elected under.
Right.
I mean, look what he faced to still get elected, and could you imagine?
Yeah.
What would be going on behind, if he wouldn't have been.
Right.
Well, anyway, buddy, have a good weekend.
Okay. Thank you for calling. All right. Bye-bye. All right. Well, I just, I was talking about DJ Trump's butthurt salve, and one of the listeners ordered me a jar. I think it's not the same brand, so his brand must be sold out, but it's called Butthurt Balm. And it's going to be here Tuesday so I can try it out. And it says on the label it's recommended for the sensitive snowflakes. So I probably know some of those people, so I could share it, give them a little fingerful so they could use it on their butt. So thank you for helping me out with that. And I just want to say way to go to all you Tea Party people in Yuba County that started the Tea Party here, the chapter, and went through. I have been cited by the government, had legal action being brought to me against me by the government. I've been investigated by the Secret Service during the Obama years, asserting that I was going to kill the president or something. I know a little bit of what it's like to be under some pressure like that. So I just want to say attaboy, attagirl to all you folks out there that stood up as long as you did and resisted and tried to cooperate. It's interesting how you have good intentions and you give the government the benefit of the doubt and you just try to answer all the questions and be honest and forthright and straightforward, and you get your nose broke, right? That's what happened with the Tea Party people here locally. And so they didn't, I don't believe any of them really quit. They just, as Craig Christensen said, they went underground kind of. They just still are active, but they aren't meeting as a club. And I think that's what happens when you have an oppressive government. People that try to do things the way the government asks and try to just be complicit, they eventually, when you realize that this is all a game and they're manipulating you, then you go underground. That's what's happening, really. I talked last week about an attorney that did a hit job on the Church of Glad Tidings, and the church has always tried to follow all the rules with Sutter County to build and develop and just mind their own business. And now the county is harassing them and wants to charge them. Supposedly the county was very complimentary. Oh, you're doing wonderful things with the homeless. And now they want to charge them $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to do a development. So maybe the church isn't, under its First Amendment rights, freedom of religion, maybe the church is sovereign and doesn't need to follow all those rules. And we've just been overkind to government and jumping through a lot of hoops that we didn't need to jump through. So we'll see. This week, I wrote an argument against Measure K. Measure K is an effort to put a new sales tax on Yuba County voters, citizens, or anything purchased in Yuba County or anything purchased by Yuba County residents. It goes both ways. So if you want to buy a car and you live out in the unincorporated areas, that's outside Marysville or Wheatland, if you want to buy a car, you can buy it in outer Slumbodia and still pay an extra tax here locally once this tax passes. So you might want to pay attention. It's called Measure K. And the government, by law, is not supposed to use our tax dollars to lobby against us to tax us. But they ignore that law. And so they are simply violating the law. Any law can be violated by the government or by individuals if the government will not enforce the law. and take people to task. The government being the local district attorney or the Fair Political Practices Board. The government using our tax dollars to lobby against us to take more of our wealth, that's a violation. That's against the law. But unless these entities will do something, we just continually get screwed with people. It's like taking your car and running you over with it, right? Stealing your car and running you over with it. So I wrote an argument against Measure K, but I want to read the argument for Measure K, because when we filed it this week, then the county clerk, Terry Hansen, then provided us with a copy of the in favor of Measure K measure, so we could write a rebuttal, or I could write a rebuttal if I wished. So she was right up. Terry Hansen's people were on it over here in Yuba County. So it's interesting when I look down the list here of all these people that are for Measure K. They're all government employees. And Wendell Anderson, the incoming sheriff, Steve Durfer, the retiring sheriff, Pat McGrath, the retiring Yuba County District Attorney, Rich Webb, Fire Protection District Chief, and Nick Morozinski, Cascade Fire victim. I think Nick works for Yuba City Police Department. And anyway, I'm going to read this argument in favor. This is going to be in your ballot arguments. And it says, did you know Yuba County handles over 8,000 911 calls for medical service emergency? Sometimes there are only 2 emergency dispatchers, even during natural disasters like the recent. So in other words, shortage dispatchers. Fire districts are also relying on or exclusively staffed by volunteers. Firefighters work with broken equipment. Anyway, they make the argument, did you know that a lot of firefighters are volunteers? If you look up firefighters, like on Wikipedia, you'll realize that it's very easy to find. Most firefighters in the United States are volunteers, and nobody thinks that's a bad thing, right? It's just that's the way we do a lot of volunteering in America. Most firefighters are volunteers. That may be news to you. And it isn't unusual for just 2 dispatchers to be on at any dispatch agency around here. So, and this says, yes, on K will support our firefighters who are critical. Talks about supporting firefighters, stopping wildland fires, maintain and improve emergency response times, maintain 24-hour sheriff's patrols, as if they're going to not do that anymore, attract more people for jobs in the county. So let's see, stop hard drugs, gang violence, And it says Measure K is physically accountable by law. All Measure K funding must be spent locally, and none can be taken by the state. Now, this is, some of this is a little, what they call a sleight of hand, a little bit deceptive. Now, I know that the 5 guys that I read there did not write this. Robert Bendorf or his people or his public relations team wrote this. It's deceptive. I'm going to cover the deceptions, and then I'll read what I wrote. I wrote mine before I could look at this. I was only privileged to look at this after I submitted mine. Yeah. Do I still have time, or we can take a break? Take a break. Santos says it's time to shut up. We'll come right back. I'm going to cover this Measure K for you. You can decide whether you want to be taxed more or not.
Bringing new meaning to the term first responders.
Fellow community members stepping forward, volunteering their time to help others faced with what might be some of the most traumatic incidents in their lives.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP. It's been used in communities across the United States for years, and its volunteers have been dispatched to provide what they call emotional first aid.
A collaboration between police, paramedics, fire departments, and even hospital staff is making sure residents are emotionally taken care of in a time of crisis. Residents are volunteering their time with the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, dispatched to the scene of a fire, accident, or death to focus focus on the emotional needs of those left behind.
It's just being there and being comforting, like a good friend or an extension of your family.
Ready to assist, sit, and listen to community members in a time of tragedy.
To learn more about the Trauma Intervention Program, visit yubasuttertip.org or call 673-9300.
Check out the Territorial Dispatch. Papers are weekly and can be obtained free at distribution or by mail through subscription. It's only locally owned and operated newspaper in the region. The paper is the rest of the story. And also check out the E-Territorial. It's an online version of the Territorial Dispatch which features local news and events for the Yuba Sutter, Colusa, and Nevada County areas. You'll also find daily and breaking news updates, current traffic, and weather information, along with a calendar of local events. Visit the E-Territorial at eterritorial.com.
All right, Lou Benninger here. We're talking about a tax increase. Many counties and cities up and down the state of California are resorting to this because it doesn't matter what they say, the real reason is they cannot fund a corrupt and bad idea, which is the government running a pension system for government employees. They cannot fund it. They cannot keep up with it. And so every year, guys like Robert Bendorf, administrator for Yuba County, will say, well, our revenues are up, but the cost of doing business has gone up even more. But they never describe the cost of doing business, or rarely. But if you look at it closely, what the cost of doing business going up means is that salaries are going up. You know, you don't have to be a high-performing county worker to have salary go up. You just have to breathe. If you're still breathing, you get automatic raises. So salaries are going up, but pensions are going up because when they promised the pensions, the amount of pensions they promised, when they made that promise, they had no way to fund it. Right? That's like you buying a house and you think, tell your wife, there's no way we can make those payments. Right? How are we going to make those payments? We're going to have to take extra jobs. So they don't have the funding in the general fund to put aside the money for the pensions. They're paying the people, but they're not paying for the pensions. Now, if you and I, those folks out there that are working in the private sector, probably 95% of you are funding your own retirement. That means every dollar that's in your retirement is your dollar plus interest or gain you made in the mutual funds or something. The difference between the government retirement is that they don't fully fund it. In fact, in many cases, like we just realized the other day, I was shocked. Some of the top executives in our county and city government don't even pay anything into their retirement. And the taxpayer has to pick up their salary plus their whole retirement contribution to CalPERS. And so the issue, the reason there's not enough money if you've tripped or sprained your ankle in the holes in the streets of Marysville, that's because we're paying that money that should have gone for roads for pensions and health policies. You might not realize it. Well, I'll cover it in a minute, but that's the reason for this tax thing. They're throwing out all kinds of reasons. Oh, well, what about fire protection? What about this? What about that? Like, we just can't afford to do that anymore. Well, the problem is the county's doing a lot of things we don't even want them to do. Like I had a friend say to me, do you realize that right in the middle of this tax increase, now when you go to the county government building over at the base of the 10th Street Bridge, you can't even go in. There's all kinds of guards there and metal detectors and everything else. That's all. County is continuing to spend and expand. Spend more money and expand. So then they start saying, well, we got all these volunteers. So does the rest of the country. Don't try to tell me that you're going to create an all-paid fire department throughout Yuba County. In fact, Santos just said, Lou, he questioned, I think they got a typo here on their ballot argument. They say they handle over 8,000 911 calls for fire and medical emergencies each year. I think they handle a lot more than that. That's only 21 a 24-hour period. Let me see I just figured this out as I was sitting here. Yeah, You divide 365 into 8,000, that's only about 22 calls in a 24-hour period. That's not right. I think Yuba City Fire does over 16,000 responses a year alone. I think so. I'm not sure, but I think they said that once. But whether or not, maybe they don't. But the fact is, I don't think that's accurate. But here's the point. Where they're using this money, if they said to you, if they were honest and said, we need another $4 million a year to cover our pensions, do you think people would vote for it? Hell no, they wouldn't vote for it. It's like people are saying that are putting they're marking that ballot, are saying, I don't even have a pension. Why do I want to pay $4 million a year for you to have a pension? And I don't want a supervisor to have a pension. For God's sakes, they're supposed to have their own business. Supervisors in a career job, and we're paying them a pension? So they don't want to say that. Why? Because public relations firms that are hired with your tax dollars are telling Robert Bendorf and his supervisor, you can't say that, dude. You got to tell them that they are going to die because we're not going to show up on time on emergency response. So that's what they're saying in this ballot argument. It gives you the impression that they can't do 24-hour sheriff patrols without this money. So then they say, this is totally, I know these guys that signed this, Anderson, Durford, McGrath. I know these guys are honest people. They had to bite their lip, man, to sign this. They had to sign this. I just went through this. They had to sign their name to that. But some of this, I know that they don't agree with. Measure K is physically accountable. It is not physically accountable. There's no law that is holding anybody in the county to spend this money for anything in particular. They can spend it for bubble gum, right? Junkets to Washington, D.C. They can spend it on anything they want. They do not have to spend it on firefighters or cops or anything else. They can spend 20%, 2%, 40%. And then they say there's oversight and financial audits will ensure the money is spent as promised to the voters. It's a crock of crap. There is no oversight. Oversight is only effective if it has legal impact. That's what I just got through saying. There's laws against the way they're spending the taxpayers' money to promote this new tax. But unless you have a district attorney or fair political practice people to take them to task for this, it's a useless law. It's the same way as the Brown Act, which supposedly forces cities and counties and state government to have open meetings. But as long as there's no enforcement of the Brown Act, people meet behind closed doors all the time. So the measure is designed to be not physically accountable, and it never will be. They say, well, we're going to have a citizens committee overseeing it. You know how many citizens committee have been ignored recently? How about, let's talk about the homeless committee that was just formed to pick a site for the homeless center, a center of housing for homelessness. They were asked to serve. They served for months. Then their recommendation was ignored. The KDAC group under the Sutter Buttes flood control people, Sabufka, they were formed at the request when they put that bond on the ballot. The Sutter Buttes Taxpayers Association said, we will not support all these assessments for 30 years to build these levees unless there's a citizens group overseeing the spending to assure the public that money isn't going to go elsewhere. What happened after a couple of years, Sabufka didn't like the criticism that the citizens group had of the way the money was being spent, so they just dismissed the group. And now they spend the money however they want to spend it. Citizens oversight groups with no teeth, they cannot fire anybody, they cannot get hold of the money, they cannot file any illegal action. It's useless. It's just all show. It's all show. It's like bringing your honey some flowers that you stole from the guy next door, right? That's all it is. It's all a fraud and a show. So they talk about everything in here but never mention pensions. So now I didn't get to read this argument before I wrote mine. Now, doesn't work that way. So here's what I wrote. Measure K, this is being the ballot. It's already been approved. Measure K is not a sales tax for public safety. Not one dime is legally dedicated to this end. Proponents of the tax increase use public safety to garner the sympathy of voters. A citizens advisory panel to oversee county spending has zero authority to direct tax dollars collected. Yuba County budget shortages are due to rising payroll, pension, and health insurance costs of county employees and supervisors. The increases are in the millions of dollars each year and are unsustainable. County workers' pay and benefits are far higher than the private sector. I want you to listen really closely to this, Yuba County. The median pay and benefits for county employees was $83,108 in 2016, according to the transparentcalifornia.org website. The median pay, I said 83,108, right? Hold that figure. The median pay for full-time workers in the private sector was $37,103. Now this gets even more scary. There were 689 full-time workers, county workers in 2016, or one for every 107 residents. In 2016, 250 of these employees earned from $92,862 to $277,207. These figures do not include judges who are paid by the state. Yuba County government is just too large and too expensive. Now, there was no talk in that ballot argument of we're going to shrink government. If you give us this money, we're going to shrink government. We're changing our ways. We're going to look for the best price on products, which, by the way, the government does not do. State and local, I go on and say this, state and local politicians don't address overly generous government employee benefits because they are beholden politically to unions. That's just a fact. That's the way it is. Instead, they raise taxes on the public who are paid far less and in most cases have no pensions. Some county employees get 70%, 80%, or 90% of their salary as a pension for the rest of their lives. The 1% sales tax increase can cost families thousands each year. County residents will pay an extra $300 tax on a $30,000 auto, no matter where it's purchased. DMV fees are based on residence, not on purchase locations. Citizens have no say in county pay for employees or supervisors. Our only recourse is to stop giving politicians money where we can. Vote no on Measure K. So, Yuba County, it's up to you. You can feel sorry for public safety. I work with public safety every day of the week. I'm in the jail. We're in the jail 3 times a week. I'm in the jail 2 days a week, working with correctional officers. Have great respect for the whole bunch. Fire, police, sheriff, correctional officers, everything. However, when the citizens have no decision-making power over pensions, over payroll, even we don't have any influence over paying egregious prices for the same thing you can get for 30 or 40% cheaper elsewhere, and the county just says, screw you when you bring it up. You know, it's interesting. When they don't want more taxes, they just tell you to up yours when you bring up issues. And then when they want to raise taxes, then it's, oh, yeah, we got citizens accountability. We got citizens panel. We got this. When they fired KDAC, all those women and men over there serving at no charge, while all these dogs are making $100,000, $200,000 working for this Sabufka, Sutter Butte's flood control people, and they just canned them as soon as they didn't like what they had to say. There's no transparency there. That's dishonesty. And now what they're trying to do now over in Sutter Butte's flood control is go from a levee building assessment system and district to now wanting to use the monies that are being forcefully taken, right, off all the parcels of Sutter and Butte County, they're being taken to promote more assessments to do the maintenance on the levees rather than let the state of California do the levee maintenance. And Sutter Butte's taxpayers are taking issue with it. Levy District 1, Levy District 9. So all this talk of government, what the government in the recent debacle between the county of Sutter and Glad Tidings is proof of that. They're manipulators. They're disingenuous. They're liars. They're cheats. And as Craig Christensen says, they have a deep pocket. They have your taxpayer money, so they'll just lodge legal actions against you. I've had that done. Glad Tidings has that done by the state of California and the counties when we were helping women that were had newborns, and they harassed us, and we had to hire attorneys to fight them because they didn't think we should help women with the newborn kids. They thought we need to be a foster family agency, or in other words, the government just wants control of everything, don't they? They want to be socialist. It's an ego trip. So anyway, that's Measure K. That's going and while I was researching Measure K, I think Measure J is Marysville Joint Unified School District. Does it ever amaze you how your property taxes goes to schools, but the union has it set up to use all your property taxes for salaries and running the school, but nothing to build a new building. They don't ever set any money aside to build a new building. They just suck it all up, and the whole idea, the strategy is, well, we'll just go back to the taxpayers and want more taxes. So now, do you know that we're paying on my tax bill? I live in the city of Marysville, so I pay Marysville Joint Unified. I pay on a couple bonds for them, 2 or 3, and 2 or 3 more bonds for Yuba County, for Yuba College. I don't have any kids in school. I haven't had any kids in school for 20 years, right? And but I'm still paying taxes on all those, and now they want to float a $72 million bond for Marysville Joint Unified School District. On top of the Yuba County 1%. It's like, you people are nuts. Right? Nuts. In Wiki, man, Doug Eshman, off that previous bond, those bonds that they rolled out at ridiculous interest rates before in Marysville, the top school in the county, Doug Eshman School, you know how many dollars they got? They got the goose egg, man. That's a big black eye. Eshman, Eshman's one of the most loved guys in the district. And half his kids are transfers from other areas in the district and other districts. And they hate it. The district hates it because he's not mediocre. If you are a high achiever like Mary Kovalod School, he took that school when it was an armpit school. It was a school that they always used. Oh, yeah, those kids, they got drug addict parents. Oh, yeah, she's a slut. Oh, yeah, she's a Mexican. Oh, yeah, they're all transient people. Yeah, they can't speak English, right? Oh, yeah, they live at the homeless shelter. Oh, they live in the river bottoms. That's why no one can succeed. When Doug took over, all of a sudden that's a California award-winning school. Same demographics on kids. I think this is Doug's last year, so when he retires, it will return to the same school, and the district will be thrilled. It'll return to an armpit school. But Doug got no money. Downtown Marysville, the school, the diamond of the district, gets no money, no new buildings, nothing. And now they're asking for more money. They didn't do anything for them. $72 million. Vote against it. Measure K, Measure J, vote no. Just a lot of you guys, I'm not going to be paying for this because I'm not long for this world. But all you people want to pay for this, unless you're going to move to Idaho like a lot of my friends. When you move and you sell your property, those bills don't follow you. You can walk away from socialism and nonsense and all these stupid bills and stupid fees. And, I don't know whether, maybe didn't get to the guys from Hagerman when he went to get the building permit, and they said, yeah, you don't need no building permit. Did I finish that story? You don't need no building permit for that. It's your property. Do whatever you want with it. And this, you try that. I was thinking this morning, about Cal Water in the city of Marysville. You have Cal Water up there in Oroville, I think, too. I don't know whether you do in Chico or not. They're totally ripping off people. But I thought, we have a right. That water below the city of Marysville is the citizens own that water, not Cal Water. Cal Water doesn't pay a nickel for that water. They just pump it out, send it to you, and charge you ridiculous rates. That's the highest utility bill I got is water over there at my place. And if you drive through Marysville, I call it Browntown, you'll notice nobody's watering. And then when Cal Water goes before the CPUC, they see those rates aren't very high, or those bills aren't very high. The reason is everybody's afraid to use the water. They can't afford the water. All they can use, they just drink it, shower in it, cook with it, but they let all their plants die. They let all the shrubs, all the plants, all the trees. Even the city of Marysville let trees die. Let the grass die. And then they brag, Cal Water brags to the CPUC and uses that as an argument because CPUC ain't coming up to look at the town. They just look at that overall bill and they think, oh, they're not paying very much for water. That's how stupid these California public utility commissioners, you know how much they get paid? About $150,000 a year. And then they got the stupid pill given to them by Cal Water. So, anyway, by the way, I wrote an article and mentioned that the city of Marysville didn't even have any documentation on how Cal Water, a private corporation with stockholders, got hold of the water system in Marysville. How'd that ever happen? City of Marysville couldn't even answer that question. So Chris Pedigo, a city councilman, he likes history, so he did some research and he contacted me, sent me an email with all these old newspaper articles laying out the history of the water system. So hopefully one day I'll be able to write an article to tell you how it all came to pass. But it's fascinating. We have Yuba County Water, not Yuba County, sorry. We have Yuba Water Agency, not Yuba County Water Agency, which has got so much water that we're allowing farmers to pump it and make millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Got so much water, we're selling it. Yet the residents of the city of Marysville, where Yuba Water Agency is located, all the properties around them are brown because we can't use the water. And yet they have gigantic amounts of water behind Buller's Bar Dam that they're controlling. Isn't it? It's just a paradox, isn't it? And then anyway, I don't want to get off there because I got other things I want to do today. So, all right, let me get back to my my little layout here. So I want to also mention, we got a couple of minutes, so I want to go back and talk about Elite Universal Security. And they got some classes coming up. They sponsor us out here. And they do a good job. Oh, they help over in my area. We got a lot of problems in downtown Marysville. A lot of tweakers over there. And so they help out over there. They're hired by businesses because the businesses cannot rely on the police force. I'm not making criticism of Marysville Police. I'm just saying we got so many problems that you pay your taxes for the police, then you got to go hire a private security company to help you out. That's just the way it is nowadays. So Monty Hecker at Elite Universal Security is doing a good job for businesses over at that 10th and E area where I live. So there's some classes that they offer. They'll hire you, by the way. They need some guards, and they'll hire you to be that. They'll train you. And so, and if you want to get your concealed weapons permit or you want to learn how to use a firearm, they got some classes coming up August 25, 26. It's a weekend class. You can get all that taken care of. Or they're coming back September 8th and 9th, same. In class and range day. And then also, if you've ever wondered about maybe you don't want to use a gun for protection, but you think maybe I'd have a taser. Or maybe I ought to have some pepper spray on board in case somebody wants to jack up my car while I'm in it or something. On September 1, they'll offer those classes if they have at least 3 sign-ups, 3 people signing up. So taser class or pepper spray class, it actually says taser and pepper spray. I don't know whether they combine those or not. September 1. So give them a call, and they will hook you up. Let me see if I can get a number in. 749-0280, and I'll say something else on the backside of this break. Okay? We'll be right back. All right. Well, I was trying to wrap up here talking about Elite Universal Security. So if you want a job over there, or you want to get trained, maybe you want to go into law enforcement and you don't have time to catch a certain class out at Yuba, you may be able to take some classes at what they call API Academy. So you could look on their website at API-Academy.com and look at all their classes, their class schedule. But I mentioned to you some classes coming up for your getting your concealed weapon permit and taser class, etc. So you can call them at 749-0280. They have a lot of different kinds of classes: handcuff, taser, de-escalation of force, guard card classes, pepper spray, annual security guard training. The other thing they do that I think is really helpful that is harder to get handled through government is a live scan, and they can do it Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, as opposed to certain days of the week at the Sheriff's Department. So give them a shout out, and they will help you. And I just want to say I'm into sharing, so when I get my butthurt salve, even though I don't know that it's Trump's brand, I will share it with any pussy out there that think they need some, and you can just give me a shout out. I'll give you a couple fingerfuls, and you can see whether you like it without even having to go on Amazon.com and buying it. Now, I was really disappointed with the guy that just retired from being president. I think it's University of Texas in Austin. He's a former head of the Navy SEALs. He actually made a good YouTube video speech a couple of years ago. You remember that? Do you remember it? Is it McClaven? I can't remember his last name. I loved his speech. I've showed it in jail some. It's pretty inspiring, but I was really disappointed when the fact that I finally learned he's a Democrat. He's a liberal. And he came out attacking Trump and really hammering Trump over the taking away of Brennan, former CIA Director John Brennan's security privilege. And so I'm getting down to the spot I want to get here and talk about it. So it's interesting. I found it fascinating. You know, all these controversies that are coming up under Trump are really educating me, because I never thought, like, when people left their job, they would keep a key to the business and the codes to the computer and access to the bank account. I just thought you turned all that in, like at Glad Tidings when I worked there for over 30 years, 25, 30 years. I mean, I have an office out there, but they change the keys every once in a while. And they would give me a new key, but I thought, I don't need one. You know, I come here when it's open. I don't need it like I used to need it. So I just said, hey, don't worry. They said, Lou, we'll give you a key. I said, I don't need a key. And I don't need to be able to, I'm not signing on the checks anymore. I'm not involved in that way, but I'm still involved. So this whole thing of people leaving government and still having access to top secret stuff, I just ask why. They're not working for government. They're not getting a paycheck. If they wanted to be brought in to consult, you can still consult with them. Like I consult with people at Church of Glad Tidings, like when the county jerked us around and detectives jerked us around last week or 2 weeks ago. I got a phone call, right? I didn't need to be on the payroll. I didn't need to have access to the bank account. I didn't need to have a key. And so this whole thing of like, oh my God, as long as they live, even if they become weird and perverted and go off the rail, and even if they criticize and undermine and hate the president, we need to allow them to have a security. Why? I mean, when people get fired or they lose their job or they retire, in normal private business, you do not keep all the codes, the keys, and check signing, etc. It's like crazy. And why all this fuss? So, to me, it made sense. It made sense. The nonsense made sense. This Brennan is a nutcase. And so is it McCraven? Is that his name? Wiki's looking up on anyway, I don't remember that. This guy that really, really came out and lambasted Trump is a former head of the CIA that has been out of the business for a while. And the CIA, former head of the SEALs, and he was a Navy SEAL for a time. And you can see his a cool talk he gives on YouTube. But I thought, this guy, there's something wrong with this guy. And so let's look at Brennan really quick. Brennan, head of the CIA, but when Trump took over, he left. But let's look at what he did under Barack Obama at the CIA. Brennan used his position to provide Obama political cover for the debacle of Benghazi ahead of the 2012. You remember the 2012 election? There is no way that they wanted the truth to come out about Benghazi. And Brennan lied. He's a liar. And so was Hillary Clinton. Was and is, and so Susan Rice. You remember she went on 5 different programs, morning television programs, and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied and lied. And then in 2016, Brennan and ex-FBI Director Comey constructed the Trump-Putin collusion charade. There was no Trump-Putin collusion. It was a Hillary Clinton. It was a Clinton Foundation collusion with Putin. Anybody ever thought about that? And it was an effort to ensure that Trump would not be elected, or if elected, he would be impeached. That's exactly what Peter Strzok was all about. And Brennan was in on that in that transition period. He was trying to undermine the leadership of the country instead of allowing the people of the United States to have their say and pick who they wanted. They thought, we're not going to allow the people of the United States to do what they want. We're going to do what we want. It's the same way we're seeing at the local level. There's no difference in the corruption at the federal, state, and local level. It's just done with fewer zeros behind the numbers and at a smaller time. So whether you want to discount the KDAC group, which is the Citizens Advisory Group, overseeing hundreds of millions of dollars of levy expenses, setting that up to get the vote and then firing after them, or whether you want to talk about promising the voters, oh, by God, if you pass Measure K, we got this tough advisory group that is going to oversee us and watch every nickel and every penny is going to be spent just like you want. Let me tell you something. I'm surprised that the 5 guys that signed that argument signed it, because they know that ain't true. Now, I've brought this up before, and people might think I got hooks of self-interest. I write some articles for the Territorial Dispatch, but I'm not employed there. People think, oh, that's my paper. It is not my paper. I submit an article. If they want to write it, if they want to run it, they run it. But because I'm involved with the Territorial Dispatch, I'm privy to information I normally wouldn't be privy to. And that is this. Once upon a time, when there was just one newspaper in town, that was the Appeal Democrat, they could charge whatever they wanted to government for legal ads. There's legal ads, right? You can run a regular ad which sells hot dogs for a certain price, and you pay a certain price for a column inch of ad. But legal ads that are mandated by the government to be run in a publication, the Appeal Democrat had a monopoly on those, because you have to have adjudication or a okay by the government to be the paper where those run. They had a monopoly on it and charged a ridiculously high amount per ad, per column inch. So if you wanted to have a fictitious name statement, or you wanted to change your name, or you wanted to adopt a child, or you wanted to declare something, you had to pay these incredibly high rates. Well, the Territorial Dispatch finally got adjudicated as well. And so then there was competition over these legal ads. And so the Territorial, they set a price about 30 to 40% lower than the Appeal Democrats' price. So when the owner of the Territorial Dispatch went around to the agencies, including Yuba County agencies, all the different department heads, and said, hey, by the way, we now are okayed by Judge Givens to run legal ads, and we want to show you our rates, and we think that they'll be quite a bit less since you're spending the taxpayers' money. You think they switched? No, they didn't. They said, screw you. Robert Bendorf and a bunch of them. And now a few of them do, but a lot of them still, the tax collector, Mr. Mearswa over there, who you'd think would be very sensitive to how money is spent, since he's an accountant. Like you heard Nate Black on here before we came on, he's very sensitive to how money is being spent, and he thinks a lot of money could be spent by more efficiencies in government. In Yuba County, they purposely don't use the Territorial because they don't like their watchdog approach, and they prefer the lapdog approach of the Appeal Democrat. So they Bendorf doesn't spend his own money. He spends your and my money if you're a taxpayer in Yuba County. It's called crony capitalism. In other words, you spend money, somebody else's money, with the people you want to bless and curry favor with. So when the Appeal Democrat hears something negative about Mr. Bendorf, they won't write about it the same way that would be written about elsewhere, because they think, oh my God, he's already paying 30% more for ads over here, so we want to oppress that. So anyway, that is what's going on locally in that situation. So back to the Brennan case. And so with Brennan, he organized a collusion to overthrow Trump. Third, he lied to Congress. I don't know whether you saw his testimony. Numerous times over numerous issues, he just simply lied to Congress. And so finally, now I don't think the average American even knew that these people at very high levels, National Security Advisor, CIA, FBI, these people carried their security clearances and access till they dropped dead. I had no idea. I just thought, oh, they were just in that. They left government, right? They turned in their T-shirt and the whole thing. So anyway, Brennan then was elevated to kind of the left media's analyst on all these leftist shows like NBC, MSNBC, et cetera, and he began to bash the Trump administration, and as you heard, if you listened to the previous program, calling Trump treasonous, advocating the impeachment of the president, on and on and on and on. So obviously the guy wasn't loyal to the current administration and was trying to undermine the activities of the current administration, even hoping they would fail. So now you hear Democrats in the left media howling that this is the man who got OBL, OBL, Osama bin Laden. This is a guy who really got him. I want to ask you something. How many guys that never served in the military who they perfected their desk jockey skills, how many of those guys really accomplish anything on the front of a war or in some kind of a secretive attack? And so why should we give credit to people that never leave Washington with accomplishing anything in Afghanistan? Usually what we say is they screwed things up in Vietnam or they screwed things up in Iraq. Not that they did something heroic. So why do the Democrats are now calling him such a hero? So Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes, you know the Rhodes brothers, Rhodes, that work for Obama. Rhodes says that Brennan was central to killing Osama bin Laden. What Brennan was central to was the Benghazi cover-up. Rhodes says Brennan was the point person for the Obama White House and the operation to kill OBL. He knows a lot more about defending our nation than someone who uses security clearances to punish the political adversary. You remember they said to don't let Trump, he'll totally cause a war with the rocket man. He's going to do this, he's going to do that, he's going to cause this. So, Tier 1 operator from the Navy SEALs, Robert O'Neill, he was the Operation Neptune Spear SEAL team member who actually shot and killed bin Laden. Robert O'Neill. You may not have remembered him because everybody else took credit for it. I got him. Barack says, I got Osama. I could imagine that his wife could kill Osama, but I couldn't imagine Obama. I think he would wet those little female jeans he wears. So Robert O'Neill, who actually killed OBL, he tweeted, I love this. He said, Rhodes, 23 conservatives went after OBL. No offense, in case you were wondering. So, when O'Neill and those 23 conservatives went to Abbottabad, Pakistan, to kill Osama, you know, these things just come out when they need to, right? When they went there, they really believed they would never survive, none of them. They thought, we'll kill him. But they thought they would never get out of Pakistan alive, nor would hundreds of thousands of others that would be affected by this killing of this hero to the Muslims. But they did. But John Brennan, they are back here drinking their little coffee and having their scones over at Starbucks. They didn't do jack diddly. Now, another guy, Chris Paronto, they call him Chris Tonto Paronto. He's a former Army Ranger who was part of the CIA team that fought the Benghazi Islamist attack and survived. He says about Brennan, quote, he's lucky the security clearance is all he is getting taken away. Regarding Brennan's retort that his principles are worth far more than clearances, or in other words, I don't give a crap about the clearances. Paronto says, my principles are greater than clearances too, John, especially when you and the CIA Kool-Aid drinkers punished us for not going along with the Benghazi cover-up story in order to protect you and Hillary's failures and Barack Obama's failures. You put your politics before us. So let's just put it in perspective. Brennan never served a day of his life in uniform. In his CIA application process, he admitted having voted for a communist presidential contender because he was, quote, signaling my unhappiness with the system. Brennan remains today, he was and he remains today an angry, America-hating career bureaucrat, a pussy, whose most notable field service assignment was under Bill Clinton as CIA station chief in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Under his watch, 19 U.S. Air Force service members were murdered in the Khobar Towers bombing. And you might remember when Brennan was in the Middle East, Clinton red-lighted operations to capture and kill bin Laden. Do you remember red-lighted means he put the stop to it, right? You remember that? In other words, they had him found, and Clinton says, we'll pass. and then he orchestrated the 9/11 attack. That's Brennan with Clinton, and then Brennan with Barack. So for all these people throwing their hands, I never heard such a thing, how disgusting, how this, that. I think we ought to make a law or a regulation that when people leave government, they leave all those gratuitous options behind. Clearances, free coffee, keys to the front door, codes and passwords to computers. And if they want to get called in for a consultation, call them in. They still have the knowledge. But I would just, to me, they shouldn't have that access. Forget about it. It's a new day. New people, new day. We just move on. Hey, I wanted to mention that Trauma Intervention Program. You can look it up at yubasuttertip.org. We are starting our annual fundraiser, and some of you guys out there were interested in buying some gun raffle tickets, so we're having an online fundraiser that you could go online and help. Trauma Intervention goes out on 911 calls about 40 times a month to help police and fire and all the folks that are affected by a gnarly situation. And so we operate in Yuba, Sutter counties, and we are funded by you, not the government. We get no government money. So we have a gun raffle. We're raffling off this year a Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 9mm. For you that don't know all those things, that's a gun. And we're selling a few hundred tickets at $20 per ticket. And if you want to some of you that don't live in this area just sent me some money and then I sent you back to stub. You don't need to be present to win. We're going to pull this drawing. We're going to have this drawing or pull the ticket on September 9th at the Hank Sanchez Memorial Golf Tournament, which is also the proceeds are going to TIP this year, which we're very grateful for the Sanchez extended family, large family in the California and Northern California area. And they've been giving to a number of great nonprofits around the area, but this year they're giving to Trauma Intervention Program, so we're going to draw the ticket that day, September 9th, and we'll give you a shout-out. So if you want to send a check-in, you could send it to TIP, P.O. Box 645, Marysville, 95901. That's P.O. Box 645, Marysville, 95901, and you could buy as many tickets as you want. If you need to text me or need me to call you about that, you can text me or call me at 713-1838, okay? And also you could go online. Oh, we need to take a break? Okay, I'll finish this up on the back side. We're going to take a break, come right back.
To the term first responders.
Fellow community members stepping forward, volunteering their time to help others faced with what might be some of the most traumatic incidents in their lives.
It's called the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP. It's been used in communities across the United States for years, and its volunteers have been dispatched to provide what they call emotional first aid.
A collaboration between police, paramedics, fire departments, and even hospital staff is making sure residents are emotionally taken care of in a time of crisis. Residents are volunteering their time with the Trauma Intervention Program, or TIP, dispatched to the scene of a fire, accident, or death to focus on the emotional needs of those left behind.
It's just being there and being comforting, like a good friend or an extension of your family.
ready to assist, sit, and listen to community members in a time of tragedy.
To learn more about the Trauma Intervention Program, visit yubasuttertip.org or call 673-9300.
All right. Well, this is our our last segment, and we'll be done here at noon, and then a sports talk group will come on. So I got a few things I wanted to cover, obviously, and a few cleanup items. So I was talking about the Trauma Intervention Program, and then Santos ran a little clip about them. So we're doing this gun raffle, but we're also doing an online fundraiser, and this year we're using GoFundMe. So you could go to GoFundMe.com/tip2019. GoFundMe.com/tip2019, and you could give to your heart's desire. So the goal there that says we're trying to raise $40,000. I was thinking it probably, because I don't receive any money to run this program, if I dropped dead today and somebody needed to step in and take over, and they would probably need to make some money. Most people can't devote that much time to it and not be paid something. So if you had a paid director, you'd probably need about $100,000 to run this program. And so we do it almost about half that, actually. So we need to raise about $100,000 a year to have this thing run smoothly when I come to pass. So we're in our 24th year. We've done almost 11,000 tip calls, 911. These are bad calls. These aren't calls where someone just has a bad day. This is like the worst day of your life type incident. So if you'd like to support us, you can. If you just want to do old school, send us a check. You could do P.O. Box 645, Marysville, 95901. The nice thing about TIP is that all of your money goes to clients, your fellow citizens, or to your fellow citizens serving those clients. So we train people, costs us money to train people and to provide literature. I'm going to be briefing Yuba City Police Department and Sutter County Sheriff's Department over the next 2 weeks. And so I'll be giving them about 8-page packets, each of them, and all that takes money and printing and all that kind of stuff to get that stuff out. So anyway, if you want to help us and do something, if government were to run this, I'd say it's about a $500,000 a year project. They'd be good if they could. That's why government just doesn't work. It's just too expensive to run. And that's why throughout the history of the United States, nonprofits or volunteerism was so effective. And so I wanted to mention also we had a caller that dialed us up, and they said, hey, you got your figures wrong on this tax increase, the sales tax increase. So I wasn't going to get into this, but the Appeal Democrat got all pissy about it. They wrote a little article about it. So you know what a nickel is, right? So if I say it's going to cost 5 cents, you said, no, it's going to cost a nickel. Same thing, right? If I say it's 2 bits, you say, oh, it's 25. No, it's 25 cents. No, a third person said, no, that's a quarter. We're really all saying the same thing. So, but I had a guy, I think it's one of these guys, I think it's this Brad Westmoreland they're running for council. I think he wrote a kind of snarfy little correction about me, about the tax increase. And I thought, you know something, I call them navel gazers, but the point's well taken. So this guy that called makes a good point today. The Brad Westmoreland is a guy that he wrote the thing a couple of years ago when I wrote an article about the tax increase. He said, "Oh no, you got your percentages all wrong." Well, let me just say it 45 different ways so you guys can all not have to urinate on yourself. So a sales tax, right now, most of California is paying a base sales tax, state sales tax. Every time you spend $1, you're paying 7.25% more on top of that dollar for the privilege of buying that in the state of California. Got it? Another way to say that is if you spend $1 for an item, you're spending 7.25 cents on top of that. So that item's costing you $7.25. You got it? Same thing, right? 7.25% or 107.25 cents. Got it? So is it Bob that called? Bob called, and he says, actually, I said there's a 1% increase. What I meant by that is that if you're now paying 7.25% in Yuba County, not in the county, 7.25%, they want to add a percentage onto that. The way they describe it, they being the proponents, those people for it, they want to call it 1 penny because it sounds so small. We just want 1 penny. No, they want 1 penny every time you spend 100 pennies. So another way to say that is instead of 7.25% when you buy a car, if you live out in Olivehurst and you want to buy it anywhere in the world, instead of paying 7.25% on top of the price of the car, you're going to pay 8.25%. The difference between 8.25 and 7.25 is 1%. You got that? That's just one way of looking at it. The way Bob looked at it, he said, Lou, that's actually over a 13% increase from 7.25 to 8.25. Okay? All those ways are totally legitimate. If you want to say we're adding a penny for every dollar you spend, okay. Or we're adding 1% to the 7.25%, or we're going to increase the percentage that you're paying for sales tax 13% from 7.25 to 8.25. All the increase all ends up being the same. They're not going to charge you 3 different increases. So I hope you got that. So honestly, I don't know whether the guys at the Appeal Democrat actually wear adult men's underwear. I think they got the G-strings going because they're just pulling in the wrong direction underneath. Because there's millions of very serious topics we can get into, but over there splitting hairs at the Appeal Democrat on 1 penny versus 1%. And now we have Bob who says legitimately when you're paying 7.25 and it goes to 8, you're paying a 13% increase as far as he was concerned. Math is interesting. So that's that. Also, I got to talk about this. My friend Paul Ward left me this. He's my co-worker at Glad Tidings. AB 2943, which forbids anybody from trying to talk to a person that's a transsexual or homosexual about possibly counseling them to change their way and or offering them help, right? Not forcing them. It's just saying, like somebody called me the other day and said, I need a counselor. Can you counsel me? I wasn't forcing them. I said, maybe I can do that. Okay? So there's a bill, 2943. It is actually eliminating people's rights. So 25 of 26 Democrats voted. All these people swore to uphold the First Amendment to the Constitution, in fact, the whole Constitution, and voted to destroy the free speech of sexual confusion counselors. Did you know there was such a thing? People are confused about their sex. And these Democrats want to deny the basic rights of anyone who wants to overcome homosexual or transsexual desires or addictions and trample the religious freedoms of pastors and churches that want to help hurting people be healed. I've worked with numbers of people that had problems in this area, and they ended up leaving that behavior and becoming Christians. Now the state is saying you can't do that. Now, the interesting thing, this is from Randy Thomason with SaveCalifornia.com. In fact, if you got your kids in public school, you should go to his website and look how to take your kids out of the public school. So he says there's lots of people who have had gender confusion counseling and are a lot happier afterward, according to Randy. Even Evan Lowe, L-O-W, is if Evan Lowe, he's a congressman or a legislator, is so concerned about harm, he'd oppose the unhealthy homosexual and transsexual agenda, which has the highest HIV/AIDS transmission rate in our state and the nation. and this is a good question. I want you to think about this. How come the LGBTIQ agenda encourages young people to question their heterosexuality? However, it's against anyone questioning their homosexuality. Can it go both ways? You can question your heterosexuality, but your homosexuality is stuck in concrete, and you cannot question it. So Thomason said the freedom-robbing bill is profoundly unfair and blatantly unconstitutional. Now, I said that because I want to read you this, which is an eye-opener. K-12 schools bringing in drag queens to teach gender ideology. So K-12 schools are bringing drag queens to help kids understand about their sexuality. Teachers are praising Drag Queen Story Hour. According to David Horowitz Freedom Center, the program captures the imagination and play of the gender fluidity of childhood and gives kids glamorous, positive, and unabashedly queer role models. Maurice Sendak Community School, a public school in Brooklyn, New York, hosted a drag queen, and first grade teacher Alex Hernandez marveled at the event as a testimonial, and it was published in Drag Queen Story Hour's website. You can probably look that up, Drag Queen Story Hour. So, another quote, these are testimonials. Drag Queen Story Hour gave my first graders a fun and interactive platform to talk and think about social and emotional issues like acceptance. These are first graders, folks. Being yourself, loving who you are. Hernandez said during our debrief, can you imagine debriefing first graders? During our debrief, students were preaching the incredible lessons they had learned, like it's okay to be different. There's no such thing as a boy and girl things, as boy and girl things. The first grade teacher said she would be hosting the event again the following year. Katrina Green, a teacher from Chickpeas Preschool in Brooklyn, lauded the program. The event, quote, allows preschool children to deepen and complicate their ideas about gender at the exact age when they are often developing rigid, these terribly rigid ideas like, I think I'm a guy. Like, oh, that's very rigid. Like, some days I feel like a guy, and some days I feel like a guy. Sometimes I feel like a nut, sometimes I don't. And they are developing rigid ideas about this concept. Drag Queen Story Hour markets itself to children between 3 and 8 years old. The program's reading list, you might want to run down and get a copy of this from Amazon.com or your favorite bookstore. Books like Jacob's New Dress by Sarah and Ian Hoffman and Red, A Crayon Story by Michael Hall. While the former book's plot revolves around a boy convincing his parents to let him wear a dress to school, the latter chronicles the journey of a crayon mistakenly labeled red to identify successfully as blue. God bless that crayon. Well, Fitzgerald cites articles noting a spike in children identifying as transgender within the past few years. Think about how absurd this is, the videographer said. That's Fitzgerald, the guy writing this article. The taxpayers funding adult-themed performers to come and read to our smallest children in order to indoctrinate them into a political ideology about gender, while at the same time, school districts across the country are removing any and all references to biological sex from science textbooks. Fitzgerald directed viewers to stop K12 indoctrination.org. Stop K12 indoctrination.org, where they can report indoctrination in K12 schools. Well, you might want to call your local school district. We had Yuba City Unified allow a guy to molest girls for 12 years and mess with girls, didn't do anything about it. Now, I wonder if they would have these drag queens coming into the Yuba City Unified School District. I don't know. They let a guy grab young women's booties and boobs for 20 years. I don't know how far they would go on this thing. I guess it maybe think just talking to kids about at 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, they might think, that maybe they got male plumbing, but they're female. They're really a female, and you can maybe play with dolls and dollhouses, and it'd be better than pushing a tractor around the dirt. So anyway, so I get a kick out of this. I love this statement. People just don't, sometimes it takes a lot for me to think these things through. But when Randy says this, he says, how come the LGBTIQ agenda encourages young people to question their heterosexuality, but is against anyone questioning their homosexuality? Now, that's what this bill, AB 2943, forbids. You cannot question a person about their that's just like it's a gift of God, transsexuality, or their homosexuality. So you cannot question that. But you can question people's heterosexuality all day long and into the night. So it's interesting, too. I get a kick out of all this. I had to take the oath a number of times because I was on the school board, repeated terms, 4-year terms. So every time I got reappointed, reelected, they would say, you got to take an oath. And I'd say, what's the oath? Oh, you got to swear to defend the Constitution. Okay, let's do that. Well, 20, these Democratic senators all swore to defend the Constitution. Then they turn around and say, no, you can't have free speech. You can't have a difference of opinion on this topic. This is the topic. This is our state persuasion and perspective on this topic, that God created transsexuals but did not create heterosexuals. And leave them alone. Homosexuals, transsexuals, don't touch them. Heterosexuals, they need counsel because there's possibility lurking beneath the skin is a transsexual or homosexual. It's just interesting when you think this thing through. But it's crazy out there. It's crazy. Now, finally, I don't know whether I can jam this in. I hope I can. This is really sad, but it's crazy. A millennial couple, Jay Austin and Lauren Johagan, quit their jobs in Washington, D.C. and departed for a year-long biking tour around the world. Austin, a vegan, had worked for Department of Housing and Urban Development, and Johagan, a vegetarian, the woman, worked at Georgetown University admissions office. Before departing, Austin wrote, I missed too many sunsets while my back was turned. Too many thunderstorms went unwatched. Too many gentle breezes unnoticed. They took a biking trip to Tajikistan. That's an Islamist area. And they didn't think there's any evil in the world. They just think, hey, everybody ought to just love one another. They got out there. Some Islamists surrounded their bike group and stabbed them to death. Both of them. Before they are murdered, Austin wrote, you watch the news and you read the newspapers and you're led to believe that the world is a big, scary place. People, the narrative goes, are not to be trusted. People are bad. People are evil. People are axe murderers, monsters, worse. I don't buy it, he says. Evil is a make-believe concept we've invented to deal with the complexities of fellow human holding values and beliefs different than our own. So, anyway, they were stabbed to death, and a couple little millennials had great jobs, thought, Mr. Trump and all you conservatives, you don't know what you're talking about. So they went out to experience it, and now they are part of history. Pretty sad, but anyway, they said they were in a room before they ended up meeting their fate. They were watching a television across the room. Al Jazeera was playing. Donald Trump just announced his plans to move an embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Remember that here a few months ago? And the Muslim world was visibly upset as a clip plays of sullen Trump waddling across the screen. This guy writes, that got murdered. I do my best to disappear into the soft plush of the couch. He was embarrassed to be American. Pretty sad. Pretty confused people. They were very accomplished people in the United States, young people. And they went out and walked right into a political buzzsaw. We'll see you next week.